Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Mars squaring or opposing Neptune. I recently did a video with the conjunction between Mars and Neptune, and I wanted to separate them out, even though there may be some similar things going on. I still think that the conjunction can manifest in a more I'll just say like a less challenging way, because obviously squares and oppositions are considered challenging aspects. So Mars is our drive, it's our will, it's our push to do things, our ability to assert ourselves. Anger is connected to Mars, which, by the way, has to do with assertion. And some people who feel powerless are the angriest, and they show a lot of aggression, but they don't really feel in control or powerful inside. It is the libido, sex drive, and a bunch of other things, energy levels. And Neptune is that dreamy planet that's the ruler of Pisces. So it's everything that we think about when we think about Pisces, that nebulous quality. And it rules the 12th house. So it can be addiction, it can be exaltation, spiritual bliss, that kind of thing. It can be that sense of merging, because it's not with boundaries. It's just kind of this transcendent influence. Deception is associated with Neptune, delusion, so self-deception. So when these two planets collide in a rather challenging way, you have this aggressive energy that is frustrated with the square, especially with Neptune. So, by the way, I'm just recording this off the top of my head because I was looking for information on these challenging aspects, and there isn't really much out there. But one thing I did find, and I tried to remember the website so that I could acknowledge them. I think it was called cosmosofastrology.com, something like that. And they were talking about David Bowie having this aspect, the square, in his chart, and mentioning that he was sexually ambiguous. And they were mentioning his bisexuality and how, Neptune in the 12th house, and it's associated with maybe doing things secretly, kind of having this secret sexuality, I guess you would call it. And I wanna just say something on that, because I think that the sexual ambiguity is a really good point to make in terms of somebody's appearance, but it depends on other factors, although Mars does rule the first house, so they might be just talking about image using Mars as a whole. So yeah, if you want to look at Mars as representing the first house of the image, then this could be sexually ambiguous, although I would say the conjunction would be more across the board in that way. And so there would be more of a conflict with the square and the opposition about one's sexuality. And that is a very, very good point, because I do think there's some issues surrounding sex with this combination, some conflicts, even with the conjunction. And I don't think I really covered that in the other video. But the thing is about David Bowie, I just want to set the record. I mean, he said later on that he was not bisexual, as I recall, that he was really just like jumping on a trend. He's, David had a son in Capricorn. So people with a strong Capricorn influence will tend to be very pragmatic about things. And in the early 70s and glam rock, that was a great way. And just, trying to advance one's career, that was something that he might have thought was the best way to go about it. And personally, I never thought of him as sexually ambiguous. I always thought of him as masculine the whole time. And I always thought he had a very compelling image. But anyway, let's talk about some of these things. Maybe I will talk about the sexual aspect of this since I already brought it up. Neptune rules photography. And so with this combination, and I actually read this somewhere, there can be problems with pornography. And the reason that I think that this is a big deal is because, first of all, in this day and age, that is something that I think is a big problem. And, understandably so, given our internet access and things like that. But the thing with Mars is, if we just look at Mars as the raw desire and not anything that is necessarily coming from a sensitive or intelligent point of view, but just the desire itself, and we look at Neptune as being idealistic, it creates this desire for the ideal that can't be satisfied because the square is like an obstacle. So the person is always looking for this transcendent sexual experience. And with Neptune having that connection to the image, but it being kind of what's the word, like an illusion of sorts. The person can't find that perfect illusion. When I take a picture, I'm always amazed at how, and I don't have the greatest camera either, but I'm always amazed at how it creates this ideal version of reality. And that if you were to look at something with your own eyes, you would see so many flaws. But when it's on the camera, when it's on the picture, a lot of times you don't see some of those. Even if you have a high definition camera, the way the light hits it, it's almost like painting a picture. And the picture versus the reality through your own two eyes. It's just fascinating to me that cameras cannot capture what your eyes really see. And so, especially for men, and this is why men tend to get caught up in pornography a lot versus women. Not that women never use it or ever have problems either, but I'm talking about like chronic problem is because men tend to be more visual, it is said, and therefore they are more stimulated that way. So the ideal image, the ideal person to match that image, and this is why it has wreaked havoc on relationships, because women feel insecure, like they can't compete with that image. And also the illusion of the women that are doing that and what they may have surgical alterations themselves and all of those things that are creating the illusion. But it's not just with sex. It can be with other things in life. But I just want to finish off the sex part of it. One of the reasons why this is dangerous is because Mars is driving the person. So this is why they say people can be addicted to sex, because they become immune to one thing and then they go to the next thing, and they're always driving to get to the next level. And this is where drugs come in as well. And I'll talk about that in a second. And drugs can include alcohol. Absolutely. So realizing that something is out of the person's control is very important, because the Neptune can hypnotize them or keep them in this state of consciousness that is not in reality. And this can drive a person to drug abuse, or I should say substance abuse, including alcohol. And this is also because the goal is Neptune in all of this. See, Mars needs a goal to work towards, but it's working towards an illusion. And if it wants, this is an important aspect of this, is that you may not have these issues in your life. You cannot look at one aspect and then put everything on it. So please don't think that I'm saying that everybody who has this is going to have addiction as their issue. But, work can be an addiction too. So maybe you have the sun in Leo or Capricorn, and you are a very hardworking person, or, somebody who has earth energy and they're trying to amass a fortune, but it never is enough. They set a goal, a financial goal, and then when they reach it, they raise the bar because they still don't feel emotionally secure. Because they don't feel financially secure, it's really not feeling emotionally secure, and they keep raising the bar. And so that illusion perpetuates itself. It doesn't really matter what we're talking about. You have to ask yourself, what are you driven by? If success is the thing that drives you and you achieve your goals and you set new goals, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're like, in the back of your mind, you have this ideal outcome that's going to just put you in transcendental bliss, and it keeps eluding you, then you have to realize that you are in a state of delusion, that you are hoping that these worldly goals are going to achieve that. Even spiritual goals. Maybe you have like Mars in Pisces or something, and Neptune in Sagittarius, I don't know. And you have a square with this, and you're trying to achieve some kind of spiritual transcendence, and you feel more and more disillusioned the more you pursue it. Maybe you come across false teachers or gurus that, disillusion you, that show their human side, and that makes you double down and try to immerse yourself in a spiritual life, but you find that it's just constantly beyond your reach. So this, one thing I heard an astrologer say is that having oppositions and squares in your chart is actually a good thing, because it can motivate you. So the square can motivate you to try to achieve these things. And if they're constructive types of things, that's ultimately good, as long as you are aware that you're dealing with this very idealistic influence in Neptune. Because you might be the social justice warrior, maybe your Mars is in Aquarius, or even in Scorpio, that's the reformer, that's trying to transform people. And if you find that it's hard to change the world, it doesn't mean that you should throw in the towel, but you should stop being so damn disappointed about it. And you should just accept that you can't save everybody, that it's not just, the world isn't on your shoulders, that other people have to pick up the slack, that you're just doing your part. And then you can be more realistic, because this is a very unrealistic type. These two things are very unrealistic aspects because of that Neptune and because it's a hard angle. So with the opposition, there is projection going on. For instance, especially with another person, going back to that pornography example, and it doesn't have to be just pornography necessarily. It can be your perfect woman or your perfect man, but especially on the physical side of things. What is my ideal man or woman that is my type, that I'm attracted to physically, and pursuing that, and always like expecting that other person to become what it is that you want them to be. Not to pick on men, I love men, but men have the tendency to do this with women. I don't know if they do. That's a good question with same-sex relationships. Do they try to do this with other men? Trying to get that person to become what they want them to be physically. Dye your hair, you'll look more like so and so. I was actually thinking of John Lennon, who had his first wife, trying to mold her to look like Brigitte Bardot, who was a sex symbol during the early 60s and in the 50s, I'm sure, as well. But, things like that. Now, that's kind of the old-fashioned male response. Maybe women are more likely to do that with men now that the tables have turned. And that's a strong possibility. But that idea of trying to make over your partner on the physical, to appeal to you physically. I don't know how many people would do such a thing, but maybe on a subtler level. So even, in a negative way, because Mars can be that anger, that, that aggression, making snide remarks about the partner's, body parts again. I mean, because women are the ones who can get breast implants and things like that, and butt implants or something to surgically alter themselves. It's not the same with men. It doesn't compare to men, but so I'm not trying to make women out to be victims, but just things like that. And that's a good question. If you can do this to yourself, even, I wonder if, like, the drive to be this perfect, to look a certain way, that would be very interesting. And Neptune in the first house can indicate issues with the appearance and body dysmorphia. I really think that can happen if you have Neptune in the first house. And I think, going back to the idea even of like sexual orientation and things like that, I'm of the belief that the need to label something creates a crisis in itself. If a person can let go of that, they would be a lot more at peace. But of course, there's outer influences trying to get people to create, a certain image or identity, so that they can define you by that. And then some people are just kind of defining themselves by saying, I don't have an identity. But I don't necessarily think that is the answer either. It's probably transcending the need for labels that is the best course of action. But again, some people can do that more readily than others. And with the square and the opposition, the person will find it hard to reconcile that, and they may feel a certain type of with the square especially, a sense of frustration that they can't solve this so-called problem, that they have made a problem. And it's really about letting go of the need for an illusion or perfection. I think that is at the heart of this. But I think it's built into humanity to want the transcendent, because I think that we have cellular memories of, or whatever you want to call it, unconscious memories of the spiritual world or worlds, or the other side, if you want to say. And so anything else pales by comparison. And that brings me to also people who think that they might be star seeds. And certainly with Neptune, there could be those kinds of, that desire to be in that spiritual place, that place that felt more like home or more of an ideal situation or location. And Mars is always trying to push the envelope and trying to force its will, impose its will on the universe, I say. And so really it's about not needing an illusion with Neptune and being satisfied with whatever the reality is. And with Mars, making peace with what is and not needing to push it, not needing to do something. Because this is true for everything in life. If a person, it's been my observation that a lot of people who are that are very ambitious, they seem very unhappy. They never seem satisfied. And that to me is where that Mars energy is always like driving them to want more. It's like that desirous nature that is never extinguished. And this is one of the reasons why Eastern religions or mysticism always talk about desire being a cause of suffering. And Buddhism talks about that a lot. And, the four causes of suffering, and one of them is getting what you want. One of them is not getting what you want, or getting what you don't want, but getting what you want is one of them. Because once you get what you want, you will see that it's not going to be the end-all be-all. And with Neptune, it's like you have this fantasy that there's going to be this thing that's going to put you over the top, and you're just going to be blissfully happy for the rest of your life. We can play around with that fantasy as long as we know that it is a fantasy. I do that every time I order a spiritual book on Amazon. I always think it's going to be the one that puts me over the top. And it's a fun little fantasy to have, knowing that it's a fantasy. But if I read the book and I got so bummed out, I just bought a book, and I was I heard some guy that was on YouTube, and I went out and ordered his book, and it was, maybe one day I'll understand it, but it's supposed to be basic and it's very complex, and it just wasn't something that I could sink my brain into to understand it. And I was a little bit disappointed, but I always reserve that. I understand that it's never going to be the end-all be-all, but it's fun to have that fantasy, knowing that. But some people, they just get so disappointed and disillusioned. See that word, disillusioned. And we should not live in illusion, but we can still kind of hang out there from now and again, knowing it's all just for play. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.